Hi, Grandma here, and I'm reading The Golden Goblet, and I'm beginning on page 176 of my book, and it's halfway through chapter 11. Ronifer is in the green room, as he calls it, and the ancient is there. "Oh, I cannot come to the thicket today," he stammered. "It grows late. I must go back to the shop. Tell Hecate I will see him another time." He tried to edge around the ancient, but the old man caught his arm. "Hecate has come and gone, young one. I waited in hopes of a glimpse of you. I have something to report." The ancient chuckled at Ronifer's attention suddenly riveted on him. "I've been spying again, without really intending to, I confess, and this time I saw something. I did indeed." "You saw something?" Ronifer repeated. "The goblet?" he thought. Could he have seen the goblet? Could he know where it is? "I saw a quarrel, a bitter one." Ronifer, who had opened his mouth to ask straight out about the goblet, closed it again abruptly. The ancient nodded in a conspiratorial manner, winked his one eye, and chuckled again as he led Ronifer into the lane where his donkey was snuffling morosely along the baked roadside ditch in search of a blade of something green. "Come, I must keep an eye on Lotus while I tell you. It was Setma and that Gebu of yours who were quarreling. Only an hour ago it was, on the edge of the papyrus marsh close by the fish docks. I was there cutting my day's load, no more than 3 cubits away from them, though they could not see me for the reeds. But they were angry. They all but came to blows, and I wish they had. That would have been a fine treat, now wouldn't it, young one?" "But what did they say, ancient? What was it they quarreled about?" "Oh, gold, my boy. What else? When 2 rogues like that fall out, you may be sure it is over the price of some skullduggery, one to one or the other. I think the young scamp Hecate is right. Setma has been taking whatever Gebu steals and selling it for him in another city. But it's finished now." "Finished? Ancient, what did you hear them say?" "Well, they whispered, young one. They hissed and spat and growled at each other, but all in whispers, angry as they were. I caught only a few words. One was 'never,' that was your stonecutter. Another was 'dangerous' or 'danger.' It was Setma saying that Gebu said, 'A third part, no more, no more.' There was more hissing and snarling and a few fine names they called each other, but I heard nothing more of interest until Gebu swung away, walked past the edge of the marsh, so close to me I could have touched him. 'You're finished,' he was saying. 'There are other captains on the river.' I stood quiet as an image, and he went by me and away toward the docks. When I looked again, Setma was gone too, and good riddance to them both." "It seems quite clear what they were saying," Ronifer said finally. "They've parted. That is certain. No doubt Setma raised his price and Gebu would have none of it." "So what of the goblet?" Ronifer was thinking. "What will he do with it? Did Gebu, did that have anything with them?" he asked cautiously. "Anything with them? Oh, gold, you mean? Nay, I think not, young one. I saw no pouch nor packet of any kind. Of course the reeds were in my way. Gebu carried something under his arm, but it looked like a bundle of old clothes, nothing more." "I see," Ronifer said, as well as he could for the beat, his heart jumping into his throat. A bundle of old clothes such as he had found in the chest last night? A bundle of old shanties with the gold goblet inside it. He left the ancient to his afternoon's reed cutting and hurried back to the shop. Gebu was not there. He'd not been there during the midday either, as Ronifer found out by casual questioning of Zayatop. He did not appear all day, though Ronifer watched for him constantly, his head buzzing with questions as he worked. At the day's end, he hurried home, but Gebu was not there either. A glance up the stairway showed the door at the top still closed, but unsealed, exactly as it had been at noon. What if he has gone for good? Ronifer thought as he walked slowly toward the storeroom. Nay, he could not be. He would not leave while he is growing rich, while there's so much stealing to be done, the whole valley of the tombs with all the treasures in them. He shivered and stepped into the storeroom. If only someone would catch Gebu. Suppose a soldier should see him sneaking into the valley or coming out of it with stolen gold, or should catch him walking about the streets right now with that bundle under his arm. Suppose someone had caught him. It was not impossible, was it? It would explain his absence from the shop all day, his absence now. Suppose he was in Pharaoh's prison this minute, or being dragged before the judges, or... Happy possibilities were still racing each other through Ronifer's mind when he heard the gate crash open and Gebu's heavy footsteps start across the courtyard. Slowly, Ronifer put down the water jug, feeling his whole spirit wilt, and the old burden settled down on him again. The footsteps had almost reached the stair when something occurred to him. Gebu was just turning to climb the stair, but in the instant before the angle of the stairway hit him, Ronifer glimpsed a bundle under his arm. So he had brought the goblet home again, because of the quarrel with Setna, no doubt, because he had so far found no other riverman who would smuggle his treasure out of Thebes. It might be days before he found another. It might be weeks. And meanwhile, the goblet would have to stay in that room upstairs, hidden in the chest. The gods have given me another chance, Ronifer thought joyously, and this time I will not bungle things. I will not wait for any days to pass. I will take the goblet tonight as soon as he goes out. Gebu came down the stairs again almost immediately, carrying a packet of bread loaves which he had evidently bought on his way home, for they smelled deliciously of new baked crust. He paused when he saw Ronifer standing in the courtyard. "You're early home for a change," he growled. "Oh, I've only just come," Ronifer said, hoping that lie would be believed. He did not care to set Gebu's suspicious mind working on any unusual behavior of his. He must remember hereafter to come and go exactly as always, at the same hours, at the same way. Evidently, Gebu did believe, for he merely grunted and walked on to the storeroom, jerking his head for Ronifer to follow. There he untied his packet, and leaving the loaves scattered on a shelf, broke the seal on the barrel of dried fish, extracted two, and put them on the earthen plate. Ronifer, who had expected to be asked at once for his coppers, stood holding them in his hand, watching hungrily as Gebu resealed the barrel, put a couple of loaves on a plate, and taking it with him, started out the storeroom. "Don't you want my coppers?" Ronifer asked in surprise. Gebu halted, turned with oddly abstracted air, and held out his hand for the coins. An instant later, he turned back again, gave Ronifer one of the fish, went on to the next storeroom, emerging an instant later with an oil-soaked torch. Without another glance at Ronifer, who was standing astounded with a whole dried fish in his possession and the knowledge of 3 bread loaves unguarded on the shelf, he climbed the stairs and banged the door of his room behind him. In a moment, Ronifer heard the whining scrape of his fire drill as he worked to kindle the torch. Obviously, Gebu had a great deal on his mind, or he would never have forgotten the coppers or those other loaves, or permitted his gutter waif half-brother to keep a whole fish for himself. Ronifer thought he could guess the causes of his strange preoccupation, and its guesses gave him considerable satisfaction. It could not be comfortable having a stolen treasure in one's possession and not being able to get rid of it. It could not be pleasant either to realize one had made an enemy of a rogue like Setma, and to wonder how soon and in what way that rogue might inform against one. Ronifer thought about that a moment, hopefully, then decided he dared not count on Setma's malice to help his own cause. It might be a long time before Setma found a way to inform on Gebu without informing on himself as well. And during that time, Gebu might have found another smuggler, and the goblet would be gone. Nay, tonight is my chance, Ronifer told himself. Let him seal the door or not. As soon as he leaves for the wine shop, I'll go up those stairs. Then I'll take the goblet and run to Zhao, even if it's midnight. I can wait. Meanwhile, he had a feast to eat and plenty to save for the morning, and the enjoyable knowledge that Gebu had a few burdens of his own for once. Hours later, he finally accepted the dismaying certainty that Gebu had not the slightest intention of leaving his room at all that night. Very well, then, he told himself uneasily. I will come here tomorrow at midday. The goblet will still be in his room. It must be. Let him hide it ever so well. I will find it somehow. He woke the next morning just in time to see Gebu cross the courtyard and let himself out the gate with the bundle of shinties under his arm. Ronifer was up in a moment, and after him, pausing only long enough to ensure himself of a safe margin of distance between them. Gebu walked down the street of the Crooked Dog toward the river, turned on a broad street leading southward past the fish docks and ferry landing, with Ronifer never losing sight of him a moment. Presently he turned again at an all too familiar corner, and in another 5 minutes was walking straight into the stone-cutting shop. Ronifer stopped in a nearby doorway and stared after him, bewildered. Of all the moves Gebu might have made, this was the least to be expected. Why would Gebu take the goblet to his shop? How did he dare to? Where would he hide it? The whole idea seemed insane. As soon as Ronifer felt reasonably safe in doing so, he walked quietly into the shop too, trying to appear as if he had merely come to work as on every other day. He did not risk so much as a glance in search of Gebu, but shortly after Pai had set him working his first task, he saw Gebu emerging from the squirrel room. His hands were empty, swinging by his sides. There was no sign of the bundle. He walked straight through the shop, spoke to Pai a moment at the entrance, and then vanished into the street. It was an hour before Pai needed a plan from the squirrel room. The instant he bellowed the familiar order, Ronifer was flying across the gritty floor as fast as his feet could move. Once inside the little room, he looked frantically for some sign of the bundle, some place it could be hidden. There was nothing. In the dusky light that filtered through and under the roof thatch, the shelves looked the same as ever, several tiers of them lining 3 of the walls, and a cupboard beside the door on the 4th. Ronifer looked more closely at the cupboard. It was as dusty as everything in the room, and its small doors were not sealed. Nothing could be in it except tools, cutting sand as always. He looked to make sure, so that he could leave no signs of his prying in the dust. Inside were tools and cutting sand, no more. Still, Gebu had come into this room with the bundle and come out without it. "Ronifer!" came Pai's bellow from the shop. Ronifer snatched the scroll he'd been sent to fetch and ran. He would look again. He would search whenever he got the chance. It must be there. It must be. It must. He told himself, ready to burst into frustrated tears. But where? How could anyone hide it on those open shelves? It was not in the cupboard. It was too big to thrust into a scroll. Later that day, he searched again, prying hastily through the piles of scrolls and hastily restacking them, staring defeated into that dusty, innocent cupboard. Gebu did not return to the shop that day, and when he came home at sunset, he had no bundle with him. For all Ronifer could find of it, bundle and goblet alike had vanished into the air. Well, wonder what happened to it. Wonder if Ronifer will have a chance to look some more. Maybe he was just carrying clothes to the shop and he didn't have the goblet, and the goblet's still back in his room. Well, we'll find out maybe in the next chapter. Bye-bye.